The world around us is hostile to the Word of God and to biblical values, but we are called to be salt and light, to stand for truth in a decaying culture. We are not called to run from the fire, but be willing to step into the fire. God has placed you at this time in history on purpose and for a purpose. Join us as we get better equipped to address civics and culture from a biblical worldview. Welcome to Into the Fire, powered by Dream City Church. Let's welcome our hosts, Debi and Sam.
Today's topic is truth or fiction. This will be an episode with no guests. It's just Sam and I chatting today. So
hello, everyone.
So we're doing an episode today on half-truths and deception, and just there's so much it's difficult to maneuver in today's world when it's difficult to figure out what is real and what's a lie. Mm-hmm. So we kind of want to talk about that in multiple contexts today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Talk it from multiple different angles.
Yeah.
Because the Bible has quite a bit to say about lies and deception. So what are some examples, Debi?
Yeah, so, and I don't know if you have any to add to this or not, but because the Bible does talk a lot. I looked it up. It says that lying or deception is mentioned 467 times in the Bible, that it talks a lot about lying, being deceitful, and none of it's good, right?
Right.
Like telling you not to do it, talking about how it's bad, not to trust liars. I think it's one of those things that God hates, right? Deception and lying.
It's one of the very things that I remember from my childhood, my parents like instilling that in us, like we do not lie, like that is not something we do. And because now that I'm older, I know the father of lies, that all comes where that comes from and why it's so dangerous, and to protect your heart from that and why it's so important. So go ahead.
Well, in the very first, book of the Bible, in the very beginning, it's that, the enemy tries to, or he does successfully deceive Adam and Eve by saying, did God really say that? So it's just making people question truth and reality, right? Making them question that.
Yep.
You have examples of, there's so many things that predict the life of Christ and what he would do and what he would say and where he'd be born and how he would die and all of these things, right? But yet the people at the time couldn't recognize that truth for what it was. Even though they knew what was in the scriptures, they knew what was there, and they still couldn't see it, right? Because their eyes were clouded.
What I think, right? So this is how I think God would send Jesus. This is kind of the version of what we're hearing nowadays, my truth of how things are, right? So I kind of see that correlation now, how you worded it like that, which I think is interesting.
I hadn't thought about it that way. And then even, Jesus being tempted in the wilderness, where Satan is trying to use scripture and twist it to say, oh, well, the angels will catch you, so just jump off this cliff. And it's like, no, that's not what that means, right? So we see it as a tool of the enemy. He's called the father of lies for a reason, right? So trying to either overtly lie or in many cases twist the truth in a way that people are confused.
Yes.
So that they can't see things clearly and they're confused about what's going on. So there is quite a bit of scripture that talks about lying and about being deceived. Yeah.
So what are some ways that our culture can do this? Use words that mean the opposite of reality.
Yeah, so we've actually talked quite a bit about that on the show, different times, right? I mean, some of the ones you women's health care being, talking about when they mean abortion, right? Or even Planned Parenthood.
When they mean
abortion. When they mean eliminating parenthood, right?
Yep.
Things like, we've talked about using correct words when you're, saying it's the one that just killed me. I saw this the other day. It was, I'm trying to remember now. It was a commercial for some sort, because, every 5 seconds there's a drug commercial on the TV. If you're watching Amazon Prime or Netflix or whatever. I think it's always on Prime. There's like 8 million drug commercials telling you what sickness you've got and what drug you need to fix it. So I mute them all the time. But this one, I was sitting there and it was some kind of a drug, and I don't even remember what it was for. But it specifically said in this thing that you couldn't use it if you had been assigned female at birth. And I was like, okay, so this is something that is dangerous for women, but we can't say that. We've got to say that it's, it's because our words are so convoluted that we don't know. And I know people struggle with that. It's like transgender male, transgender female, assigned female at birth, assigned male at birth. Like, what do those things even mean? And they're because they're not real things, right? So they have been invented and created. Those were not words that meant anything 20 years ago.
Right.
So it's a new modern version of things, right? And so people get confused. They don't even know what they're talking about. Myra, on that one episode that we did, she was talking about how they're talking about affirming your gender and that's confusing for people because that sounds like you're affirming reality, but it's the opposite of that. Right? So, I mean, so there's just a number of, I wrote down a couple of other ones, like an insurrection versus fiery but mostly peaceful protest.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, or trust the science when they're denying science. So that was a big one.
That's a big phrase, trust the science, when you're like, wait, you lied to us.
Well, not only that, but just trusting, and we're making light of these things, but it's
trust
what else
the professionals or the experts.
The experts.
Yes.
And when it's like the experts have been wrong a lot of the time. So again, with all of those things, when up means down and left means right, and it talks about the Bible talks about woe to you who call good evil and evil good, right? That it's that very thing that we're talking about of saying one thing, but it means the opposite thing, right? So it gets very tricky for your average person to even sort through all of that stuff and know what was going on, right? And what they're even talking about. And
keep up with the etymology of all the meanings of the words.
The changing of the meaning of words and all of these different things, right? It's very difficult to keep up with it.
Yeah, because I remember when gay used to mean happy. And now you're like, wait, that's not what that means anymore, which is crazy.
Oh, yeah, that reminds me of the funny. It's just funny. I can't even. It was the old Christmas song that has that in it about gay tidings.
Yes, I know.
And I had someone ask me. They're like, "Well, I know what." They didn't know what. Oh shoot, what was it? It was like they didn't know what Yule meant. I think. And she was like, I know what gay means, but what does Yule mean?
Is it Deck the Halls?
Yeah, I don't know, one of those songs. But I was like, actually, in that song, it doesn't mean that. That's not what that means. It means something completely different.
Yep.
And so words do naturally change over time. That's not unusual. But again, when words, I think today we're living in a time when words are weaponized. And so they're used, which, again, if the power of life and death is in the tongue, right?
Yep.
They're weaponizing. That is just a tool of the enemy to weaponize words. Did God really say that? Is this, throw yourself off
really
the cliff
true?
Because the angels will catch you. The words are weaponized, and I think in some cases intentionally. Sometimes it's just a natural progression of time, and other times it's an intentional twisting of words to confuse people.
Yes.
In fact, I didn't think about this, but I remember back when they were doing Common Core math. And one of the things that came out of that, which I think, again, you can put on your tinfoil hat, but it's just wait 5 years and you're not a tinfoil hat wearer anymore.
Then everybody's wearing it and you're like, oh, cool. That's pretty much what happened with the wearing. Yes.
But I remember one of the things that happened with that was they changed the way that everybody did math, right? When they did this with Common Core math. And one of the things that they were telling kids was don't ask your parents for help, come to us, which seems like on the surface, it's like, okay, it's a new kind of math. I don't know how to do it. I mean, even like in The Incredibles, right? They had that little scene where he was trying to help with math, but he couldn't figure out how it was done anymore because it was all different, And so it becomes a joke, right? Like a cultural thing. But under the surface, okay, we're sending this message that you need to trust the professionals rather than your parents, which then how far does that go, right? How many other things are you supposed to then go to talk to somebody else other than your family?
Right, because it's different now.
Everything is different now, and they don't know what they're talking about. Yeah.
totally warping reality. So how can emotion play effect into this? Because we're talking about how words can kind of mess with you being able to rationalize things and understand truth. How can your emotion affect your critical thinking?
Yeah, well, I think that's a really big factor in it. I mean, even, you can see with just commercials, right? They use emotion. It's like if you can get somebody to cry over a Kleenex commercial, right, then they're going to remember and, supposedly buy that brand or whatever. So commercials use it. The news uses it. Everybody uses it. My eye is wigging out. And I'm trying to.
Don't cry.
Those days. So sorry, if you're watching on video, it's quite the show. But otherwise, you won't even know what I'm talking about. My eye is watering. The commercials use it, the news uses it, politicians use it, and it's trying to get people to respond. Even in the episode that we were talking about with the choices nurse, right? It's trying to get people to make decisions based on emotion of, you've got to hurry up and do this thing. Fear. We saw it a lot during COVID where it was like trying to scare people into you're going to kill your grandma. We got to put them in the nursing home, keep everything locked up. And using emotion to manipulate people. And really when you're basing your decisions in emotion, they're never good decisions, right? You can't make decisions based on emotion. Because those are never the best decisions that you make. I mean, how many times have you made an impulse purchase or, dated someone you knew you shouldn't or whatever it is, decided to do something stupid, when you're young. When you're basing decisions on emotion, it's never a good
right. Well, because it can change, right? So yeah. Okay, so then what do we need to watch and listen for when we're digesting news and information in order to not be deceived? Because I'm thinking of like all of the ads sometimes that run in front of me, like this person is trying to cut or take away your women's health care rights, like you need to call your congressman, but you're like, wait, they're trying to take away my health care rights? What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, and even like when Prop 130, that's a good example, because when Prop 139, when they were pushing that right here in Arizona, it was, you're not going to be able to get miscarriage care, and you're not going to be able to. Then there were all these commercials of people talking about how they couldn't get health care because they,
I remember those.
They had a pregnancy that they, whatever. And it was like just different stories that they're using, but they're all very emotionally manipulative to try to get you to respond in emotion and think, oh, well, that's just too far. They can't, but none of that was based in reality, right? None of it was true. It didn't accurately reflect the laws in Arizona. They were basically lying, but they're using emotion to manipulate you into thinking, into voting the way that they wanted to.
Right.
We've seen it in a lot of other cases. This is also one of the things that I think, watching out for, like, this happens a lot. We can think of, times when there's been a school shooting or George Floyd or an event that happens, right? And everything is emotion. Everything. It's like, we had George Floyd is a perfect example.
It is, yeah.
And I remember thinking, okay, let's take a minute and see what actually happened, because we can't decide in the 50 seconds, right, that everybody had an opinion and they knew for sure this is what happened and this was the truth and this is, he's racist, he's, killed him on purpose, whatever. And, lo and behold, when all the facts come together later on, it's not the way that it is, right? And even like the hands up, don't shoot, we've had any kind of a shooting that's gone on, school shootings, there's this narrative that comes out immediately. And so I think that's one of the things that we should be watching out for, is when something comes out and it's based in emotion like that, right? That it's trying to inflame people to react to something, right, emotionally, without having all the facts. There's no way that we can know, no matter what happened, right? Whatever the incident was, there's no way that we can know all the factors in the first 30 seconds, right? Even if there's a video. because videos can be, you know, if you look at something from one angle versus a different angle, or you
That's why the MLB has multiple camera angles to try to figure out if somebody's out at second base. Come on, guys. Karen in Florida cannot piece together all this information in less time than the actual investigation, right?
You're kidding. I'm not sure Karen knew what to do with that. But yeah, no, that's true, right? So you can't, and you when you have a video from a certain angle, right? So whatever it is, I'm using George Floyd as an example, but there's been a ton of different things, from Columbine shooting to, you know, whatever, all these different things. If everybody knows exactly what happened 30 seconds after it happened, I don't trust it. Like I'm not going to make a decision based on what I saw initially, because it's heightened emotion. Everybody's upset, which is understandable, right? When something terrible happens. But it's like you had people kneeling in the Capitol and doing all that, you know, with George Floyd.
Taking down
turns out
statues.
that the story was nothing like what they were saying. Like it was all completely wrong.
Yeah.
And you know, there's the fall of Minneapolis. That's a really good documentary to watch about that story. And then also Ben Shapiro did a bunch of things talking about what's his name, the police officer, Derek Chauvin, who really should not be in jail. But looking at all those things, again, that was based in emotion. And even when you're looking at like the jurors in that case, admitted to the fact that they based their ruling on emotion because they were afraid that their city would burn down again if they didn't find him guilty. It's like, okay, well, that's not truth and that's not justice. Let's look at what actually happened, be objective about it. But in the heat of the moment, people understandably get very emotional, but that should not be the end of the... You can't make your opinion in 30 seconds of something. I mean, you can, but you're likely wrong.
You can, but
I wouldn't recommend it.
Maybe keep it to yourself.
So that's one thing, is watching for emotion. And so I was looking at COVID, we had a bunch of crazy stuff that happened too, where it was like, you know, anytime that you're not allowed to ask questions, that to me makes me ask more questions.
That should also be a red flag.
That should be a red flag, right? If you're not allowed to ask questions about anything, right? So even with those things that we're talking about, with a school shooting or a, you know, George Floyd or any of those things, if you ask a question and you're like slammed for being, you know, whatever, fill in the blank, if they want to call you, but that should be a red flag. That it's like, if that is, because that tells you that it's based in emotion, not in fact. But I was looking at, before I get into that, I was going to say with COVID, I remember getting just slammed for stuff like asking a question. Okay, if it's a virus, which is teeny tiny, how is this mask supposed to block that virus that goes right through the mask? Like, it's a scientific question.
Yep.
Because viruses are tiny. They're not going to be held in by that thing. And it was like, you can't ask that question.
You can't. Oh, I'd be sent out of class if I asked that question in Oregon. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So anytime you're not,
Wait, why can't I ask that? Especially here in America, which is why we need to recognize that is such an issue.
Right.
Yeah. So, which is like what I always come back to, which is why I think, kind of back to one of the classes that I took in college, I took a logic class.
Yes.
And it was like the first time I really was like, wait, all of this isn't adding up. And then COVID happened, which was really crazy. And that's just how the Lord works. But
right. It
yeah,
does.
it's true, because we live in America. And so we should be able to ask these questions. So,
well, you should be able to ask questions. And, you know, the other, I found some funny things on here about, so if we're digesting news, we're listening, but there were some things that was like, okay, critical thinking, what to watch out for. So it's like, okay, if they leave out important information. So the example that they had in this, I was watching it, like I was pulling up some things about critical thinking and how to kind of filter through stuff. But it was like, if someone gets pulled over for, you know, driving under the influence, it's like, okay, officer, I only had 2 beers. But does that mean that you only had 2 beers over whatever, or you also had 6 shots and a margarita? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
so that's not
Left
a
out.
complete, you leave out things, right? So it's leaving out information. It's talking about, again, with the some of the COVID information or whatever. It's like leaving out important information, or leaving out information when you're talking about a shooting, or about, George Floyd, or about a political event, or
Right.
anything, right? And it doesn't matter which side is talking about it. If important details are being left out, you have to wonder why.
Right. Like all the information leading up to the event too, not just what happened 2 seconds when somebody got the
Right.
video. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Another one is using vague wording, right? So not really explaining what they're talking about, but kind of talking in generalizations, right? Which you see a lot in commercials too, right?
yes. Or like I'm thinking of the lawsuit where they're just talking about how the abortion pill reversal is just terrible. So horrible for women. And there's no studies. Actually, all the studies prove the opposite of that.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah. And so using that vague wording, another thing is comparing items that can't be compared. So like saying that something is safer than, like saying the abortion pill is safer than Tylenol. Okay, the abortion pill and Tylenol cannot be compared. They're 2 totally different things, right? One is intentionally ending a life. So how that can be safer than any other drug, because if it works, somebody dies every time, right? Somebody does not die every time somebody takes Tylenol. So you're comparing 2 things that are not the same thing, and it makes it, it's like comparing everything to Hitler, or comparing everything to, whatever. It's like it starts to lose its meaning because you're comparing things that aren't really the same. Like they're not the same thing, and you're comparing things that are totally different things.
Yeah.
Those were the ones that watching for that. And I think too, like ones that are emotionally manipulative, right? So if it's trying to evoke emotion, but I think a lot of times people they just hear things and
Accept it as truth.
Right, accept it as truth. And do you accept everything as true? Right? I mean, and I think we have to, okay, so again, if you're watching a food commercial, right, and it's for Arby's or whatever, and it's like the best this or that. Okay, well, we know at some level that it's like we were talking a minute ago about an elf.
Oh,
where
yeah.
It was like the world's best cup of coffee.
This is the best burger.
He was like, congratulations on the best cup of coffee.
Yep.
Because you took it and it's funny because nobody would really think that, right? So if you see a sign that in a restaurant that says the world's best burger or the world's best cup of coffee, you're like, okay, that's selling me something, right? So I may agree and think that it is the world's best burger. I may not. But on some level, we know if we're, rational people and haven't grown up in the North Pole like Elf, right?
Right.
We know that that's just a sales tactic and that it's not true. So why do we not apply that same thing to other information that we come in? Just because even if it's something that, President Trump says or somebody that we agree with, right? We can't just take every single thing that we're told and assume that it's true and not ever look into it or ask questions, right? Because why? I think we've just we have so much information all the time.
That's true.
That it's hard to filter through it.
That's a good
I heard somebody say something about like we have more information at our fingertips and we know less than ever.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I was actually thinking about that earlier when I was prepping for this, because I was like, you can know so much, but to find what actually is going on is like the hardest ever. You're like, wait, is this true or is this true? Filtering through all the facts and trying to piece together all that's happening, and research is a skill too. So
yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is. Well, and two, like watching out for the way things are worded. I mean, I always, it's funny because I was interviewed, I was in it was like a little tiny thing, but I was quoted in an article in the New York Times over, I think it was when they were, I'm trying to even remember what it was about, but I think it was when they were talking about whether or not we were going to keep our pre-Roe law that it made abortion completely illegal in Arizona. So it was when Roe was overturned, there was all this thing, and I don't know if you remember hearing the news about the Civil War era law or the 18-something other law, right, in Arizona, and that it needed to be overturned. And I was quoted in this article, and it was funny because the reporter talked to me later, and she said something, I forget what it was, but I said I could tell her bias by the word choices that she used. And she's like, really? I didn't think I had any bias in my word choices. She was trying really hard. I mean, she did do a good job. Like, I will give her credit for that. She really did a decent job.
Yeah.
Of, because she asked me what I thought about it. I'm like, okay, I can see the bias, but overall, like, you did a really fair job of presenting, the two sides of it and being neutral, right? She's like, what word choices are you talking about? And I was like, well, for starters, like, let's look at, we don't, in the pro-life arena, we don't use the term anti-abortion. Like, we don't refer to ourselves as anti-abortion. We're pro-life. And so it's this, whether you're going to word something pro or anti, kind of indicates a bias, right? If you're pro-police or anti-immigration or pro-life or pro-vaccine or anti, women's health, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, using those words. And a lot of it, especially when people are using it in politics, like if they're giving their position on something, or if it's in a news media, like a reporter, they're very intentional about it. I am intentional when I write things about it because I've noticed it and I pay attention to it. But you hear things and it evokes so anti-abortion sounds negative and nasty. Pro-life does not.
Right.
So it's and they mean, it's like, am I anti-abortion? Yes, I am.
I am
if you
anti-abortion.
ask me or accuse me of that, I will say yes, I am. But that's not the word that I would use, right?
Right.
So it's having that bias of the way that the word choices that are used. And again, I made the comment earlier about, okay, when you had in 2020 what Charlie Kirk calls Floydapalooza, which makes me laugh every time. I think that's so funny. But all of the riots and the things that were happening, right? So, and the way that those things are covered differently, right? So you had, and I don't want to get into all this too much, but you had like January 6th that happened, which was so clearly staged and, whatever. I knew for a number of reasons, one of which was because I got a news alert about it before it actually happened on my phone. So that was kind of a clue for me that there was something else.
Where? You can't find it anywhere else.
Before it even happened, I got a news alert on my thing that it had happened and it hadn't happened yet. So I'm like, okay, wait, my red flags are already up a little bit. Not to say that people didn't do things that they shouldn't have done that day. People are not always smart, but
people are
was
people.
That you have like people coming in the Capitol and they're walking in line and they're following along in little stanchions, right? And it's like, you're calling that an insurrection, but things are literally, federal buildings are on fire in Portland, and that's a peaceful protest, mostly peaceful protest.
Yeah, or what was that city in Washington, in Seattle?
Right, it was in Portland.
Yeah.
It was in Portland where they had I forget what it was even called.
I know. I can't believe I forgot already.
Where they literally took over that area and held it.
Chaz.
And they had it.
Pulled that from deep in my memory.
Yes, thank you. They had that, nobody could get in there, and it was like everything's on, you have cars on fire, and they're calling it a fiery but mostly peaceful protest.
Right.
That's being downplayed the way that's explained, and then there's something else that's clear. Even with all of the years that I've gone for decades. I use this example a lot. I've gone for decades to pro-life events, right? Marches. I go to the one here in Arizona. I've been to the national one a few times. Never have seen anything remotely violent or nasty going on ever, the whole time, right? And you have here thousands of people in Arizona, in DC, hundreds of thousands of people peacefully. I mean, we're talking nuns with little, instruments and, marching bands going by with high school students and babies and strollers, right? Hundreds of thousands of people that are going by, and they call that a protest. It's an anti-abortion protest.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's just the way that things are worded, it evokes, because that's always something when I invite people, I'm like, do not be afraid to go, people are afraid to go because they think it's going to be crazy. I'm like, I have never, ever seen anything happen.
Right.
I've never seen any kind of violence happen, nothing. You might have 3 people holding signs on a corner yelling at you, but that's it. Like, there's nothing. And there's just really, it's very peaceful, but it's the way that if you look at like and the way that things are worded in the newspaper, it brings up a different picture, right? So those are also things to kind of look for. Word choice is a big one, the way that things are worded. But if you're not paying attention to it, it just goes right over your head. Like,
goes right over your head. Or it kind of, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to butcher the term. It's going to come to me, but it's like training your brain to see those words and think that way about those terms and about those things. It's gonna. I'll think of it. But but it's training them to think that way also when they're reading it like that.
Right.
So
you have to learn to read things or watch things and think, okay, wait, why did they use that word? Like, what is that? That word means something. But again, if you're not really thinking about it, that was the whole bunny trail that I went down. We had that one episode where we talked about humanized mice, right? That was something that, okay, you're reading this, and I had seen the term come up a bunch of times. Well, if you don't ever stop and go, what in the world is a humanized mouse? Then you don't go any further, right? And you don't know that this stuff is happening literally right under your nose. And it's like just the wording of things that are happening is a really big clue as to where the bias is and how they're, it's funny because in talking about like the NPR defunding, people were freaking out about that, but they did a study of it, and it was like, I forget, it was something ridiculous, like how many to one, like that word choice that they used that portrayed one side as negative versus the other, one political, like it was not at all unbiased. Yeah, there's no way you could look at that and say that is an unbiased news presentation, right? Because it was it was ridiculous. I can't even, I don't remember the numbers, but it was like,
it's like watching CNN.
But it was worse. Like this one was even worse as far as like how many times they used things like far right, or alt right, or whatever, like the different terms to try to make it sound as bad as possible versus that's why I do it too, right? We have this, I always say that I like to refer to Planned Parenthood as a multi-billion-dollar abortion industrial complex, right? So it's like you use that versus a women's health champion, right? So it's describing the same thing, right? But the word choice that you use evokes a certain, and this is just, if you take any kind of writing, if you've ever done any kind of reporting, this is just the way that it is, right? We know that. You choose words based on what kind of an emotion or a picture you want to portray. Everybody does that when they're writing. But we have to be thinking about that when we're reading things or listening to people that filter it through that kind of a lens of, okay, what are they trying to make me think by that word choice?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So why are statistics not always a good measure of truth either? This is actually one of my favorite questions that you put on here.
Yeah.
Because,
what do you have to say about that?
Oh, you can make numbers say anything.
Yeah. Right.
That's literally, we say that in my family all of the time. We're like, you can make numbers say anything. And coming from lab where I had to spend days in lab and come up with a report and do all these things, you can make numbers say anything. The graph, just adjust it. Yeah. Anyway, so it's very interesting. It's why unless you know who ran the either experiment or the study, the questions they asked, the people that they ask, and like everything around it, numbers mean nothing.
Virtually nothing.
Yeah.
You look at even like, presidential polls of who's going to win what election, and like they're it depends on who's doing the study, but a lot of them are wrong. Like there's some that are actually accurate, and there's other ones that aren't. You talk about especially like in the abortion industry, they do these studies and make numbers, like we were talking again on an episode about how they claim that it's only 3% of what they do because they fiddle with the numbers that abortion is only 3% of what Planned Parenthood does, which is absolutely not true.
Right.
When 97% of women that come in there end up with an abortion, there's no way that that's 3% of what they do.
Yeah.
But they fiddle with the numbers to make it look like it's something other than it is. So it is really easy to manipulate statistics. So you have to be careful when you hear, like if somebody says, oh, well, this number, fact check it, look it up. And and take it with a grain of salt. Like it can be true. It may be true, but it may be completely
if it's a truthful person hunting down for the truth and actually trying to figure something out, it's a different story.
Well, and if you look at who's doing the study, like you said, so if you have a cigarette company that's giving you statistics talking about how safe smoking is, right? That has a bias to it, right? Because they want to continue selling their product, right? It's the same with abortion. It's the same with whatever. Fill in, any cause in there. You can really, if you have groups that are doing their own studies, they can be manipulated to make it look like it's something that it's not.
Correct.
So just take it with a grain of salt and do your own digging into sample size and who paid for the study. Are there any other studies that say something completely different?
Yep. You'll be really interested to see what you find or what you don't find.
Yes.
So
yeah.
So how can we fact check what we read or what we hear?
Yeah, so that's really tricky because in the days of AI where, I can find a video of myself speaking a language that I don't speak, right?
Right.
You can do all kinds of stuff with
pay for premium and get all the sound and video.
I know, right? It makes for really good memes, which we have all kinds of memes going on with things that are just funny because you can manipulate things with AI, right? So you do have to. It is difficult to see. And especially when you've got, if you have both sides of some saying that an election was tampered with in two different directions, or you've got, whatever, there's all kinds of different things happening where you have two different completely opposite narratives being told. Well, which one is true?
Right.
And you have to be careful not to just assume that someone that you like is right, because they may be, they may not be. It's just a matter of having discernment. I think that's the biggest piece of it is praying, having discernment, trusting the Holy Spirit, spending that time in the Word of God so that you have that plumb line of what is the truth and what's not the truth.
Yep.
And praying, it does help you filter a little bit more easily through information. And then just a lot of the things that we looked at, right? We talked about double checking things, checking from a variety of sources. I've said on this show a number of times that I'll look at what pro-abortion groups are saying about something. I'll look at a topic and look it up from, a bunch of different angles. And because then it just gives you a fuller picture of what's actually happening. If I look at what they're saying versus somebody on the opposite side, what they're saying, and then you kind of can figure out what's the truth in the middle of that. Looking for original sources, because you'll see the same story. If you ever pay attention, like if you'll see a news story, you will see the same exact story being replayed by like NBC, CBS, all these different things, and they or even in print, right? And it'll say AP news source, and it's exactly the same wording that's just being like as if it's a bunch of different sources, but it's just the same exact article being reprinted.
Right.
So start paying attention to who the source is. Even, we've seen those, if you've never seen them, where they take like all of the different news people saying the exact same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, and clip them together.
It's kind of creepy.
It's really creepy. It's funny at first, and then you're like, okay, now I'm getting kind of scared. When you see how many there are.
And that they're saying literally the exact same thing. It's like they're being told what to say. So when you're looking at, okay, are these all coming from the same place? Right. And just kind of paying attention to that. Who is the source? Where, and again, too, like if you have something that's happening, okay, like George Floyd, that was, if I'm going to look at what is the Minneapolis Police Department saying? What are these people, like things that are closer to home? because those tend to have, this is one of my issues with like Arizona things, and you have national people talking about what's happening in Arizona. Well, they don't know. They're not here.
Right.
I mean, they may have an idea, but local places know more about what's actually happening than somebody national, right? So it's important to kind of look at the local things to get a better idea. They're not always true either, but it does help you to get as close to the original source of something as possible to find out what's actually happening. And then just ask questions. Look for, like I said, looking for word choice, looking for why the way that things are worded, all of those things. It is really tricky to try to figure that out, but the more that we start doing it, then it becomes kind of like now I can't help it. Like I see it right away. I didn't necessarily at first. Like when I first started 20 something years ago, getting into all of trying to do research and look at this, it was much harder. It really was much, much harder to try to sift through and find the truth in the midst of so much information. But the more, it's just like anything else, right? Whether you're talking about prayer, whether you're talking about reading your Bible, if you're talking about eating healthy, working out, anything that you do, the more you do it, the easier it gets. And so the more you start kind of critically thinking about what the information that you're getting, the easier it is to sort of filter through and say, yeah, that doesn't sound right to me.
Right.
Because I know this other thing is true.
Yes. And then you're like, oh no, nothing sounds right. Well, because I always think back to like the only thing you can take as truth is the Bible. Right. So everything else, no matter who it comes from, where it is, like double check.
We say that on
double
here,
check.
Right? Fact check me.
Fact check me. Yes. Because also you can be wrong too. So yeah.
Well, and if you think you can't be wrong, or this is another thing, if you get emotional about, like if somebody, something that I, like the life issue, right? Super passionate about it. I know a lot about it. But if I'm challenged on something or somebody asks me a question, I don't react emotionally and I'm not upset about it because I know what I'm talking about and I know what's true and what's not true. If you get emotional or if your instant reaction is to be emotional, then that may not be based in objective truth. It may be more emotionally based. If you can't objectively sort of reason through something and take a challenge to a question or, like be able to answer.
Take the debate.
Yeah. Right.
I love taking the debate.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think
we found a really great video, which we'll link on PragerU Kids, but I think adults should watch it.
Adults definitely should watch it. Everybody should watch it.
Good.
It was really good. It's a 7-minute video.
It was 7 minutes long, and it was called
How to Think Objectively.
So if you look up PragerU Kids, How to Think Objectively, we'll also link it in the show notes, but man, it was good. It went through, some of the stuff that we've talked about, but like how to kind of look through stuff objectively, because so many people are trying to get us to react in emotion or to just believe something without any evidence. And it's important in this day and age, especially if we're nearing, whether we're in the end times or we're close to the end times.
Right.
There's so much deception and people are not going to know what's up and down and left and right and right and wrong and all those things. We know that it's super twisted. And so you have to really be deliberate about seeking the truth and not just taking everything that you hear or see as fact.
Yep, because it shows you how easily a story can be warped and changed to deceive.
Yeah.
So good.
So good. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us on Into the Fire, powered by Dream City Church.
You can listen to this podcast on Apple and Spotify and follow us on social media to find all the info on the show notes. To learn more about Dream City Church, visit our website at dreamcitychurch.us. Thanks for listening.